In this video we're gonna break down every single improvement in Attack on Titan's art, from the shading and detail to anatomy and paneling. And to give you a heads up, this is probably the most drastic change we've ever seen in this series, and I'm not the only one to say this. Unlike the culture war, which was sparked by Attack on Titan's ending, dividing the fanbase into schizos and copium addicts, the community overall agrees that the art used to be kinda mid. Whilst it did eventually become a spectacle masterpiece, it took Isayama many years to reach that point. To be fair, it does make sense. Attack on Titan was in publication for 10 years and has 139 chapters to boot. So the real question is, how did it evolve exactly? Attack on Titan differs from Art Evolutions, as Isayama basically tore out the foundations of Attack on Titan to make something actually good. unlike the final chapter. He is also one of the very few people we've discussed, along with Fujimoto, who just wasn't born with absurd amounts of talent. One glance at his one-shot says all you need to know about that. Let's just jump right into this by discussing the anatomy, as it is probably the biggest eyesore in any art style. But speaking of art style, what is it exactly? In layman's terms, art style is the culmination of artists' personal tastes, techniques, and avoidance of other techniques. Hellsing's mangaka hated drawing the left eye so much, he just didn't. he just didn't.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the...
It is generally very hard to make your own original style, but there are two rules to it. Firstly, you gotta be consistent, and secondly, you cannot mix and match different anatomical elements and then just say, it's just art style, bro. Berserk would feel odd if Guts looked like Hulk, the same way Thorfinn would have been an eyesore in this abomination of an anime. My friend just doesn't let me rest. Look at this, it just doesn't end! These art styles differ in every single way, so you have to stick to a certain spectrum. So if you're going with a traditionally humanoid but cat-faced anime characters, you have to commit to that, whilst not giving the characters alien isolation foreheads. Needless to say, Attack on Titan's proportions were very off, whether that be with the oversized heads, stubby limbs, misplaced limbs, or all of the above. This panel stuck out to me the most when researching for this video, because I just wasn't able to understand what was happening with his skeleton. I tried to connect the rough skeletal lines, and well, it still doesn't make any sense. Whilst yes, foreshortening is in full swing here, if you overlay the rough skeleton, it just doesn't even align with the alterations. The left shoulder, which is further away, is bigger than the right arm. The fundamental law of foreshortening is that whatever is closer is bigger. This shows a lack of anatomical understanding on Isayama's part, in cases when he doesn't intend to alter anatomy, and in cases when he does intend to. But thankfully, over time, he does get a grasp on it. And so, this is the final product. Every single character is anatomically flawless, whether that be in stationary positions or in dynamic camera angles. This, coupled with Isayama's newfound understanding of human body language, makes these characters feel almost alive. Aside from the bodies, another major part of anatomy that changed is the faces. They used to be very flat, cartoony, and honestly stiff. There wasn't any nuance or subtlety in these expressions, and oftentimes this just resulted in exaggerated faces. This is good type of exaggeration, where the expression is clear and loud, whilst it is formed around the character's design, not the other way around. Also, I have a pretty big revelation to tell you. I don't know if you're ready, you probably need to sit down for this one. Faces in anime were never meant to look human. Across anime and manga, faces are usually drawn to be cute, and as a result, they're illustrated in the image of a cat. Huh? Yes, a cat. Huh? If you look at most anime characters on a profile, they have muzzles. I frankly just never understood why this was there, but now I've been enlightened. You may be asking yourself now, what does this have to do with Attack on Titan? And frankly, nothing actually, and that's exactly the point. Because Attack on Titan is one of the very few mangas where faces were drawn in an anatomically cohesive standpoint. At least as correct as Big Eyes can be. Despite Isayama leaning towards a far more realistic style, and this exploding in his face at one point, the style eventually became very well-rounded and frankly realistic to a degree. These faces now capture so much nuance, so much emotion, and honestly, I feel like Attack on Titan is one of the very few mangas where a lot of the characters have very different faces. Speaking of realistic, one more thing that became realistic is the shading. Shading is by far the most agonizing thing about early Attack on Titan, as it has no cohesive direction, no dynamicness, no clarity, or consistency. I know it may seem like I'm dogging on it a bit too much, but can you really blame me? After what Isayama did, he fumbled the tumbling that was supposed to be the rumbling, not once, not twice, but 3 times! I'll never fucking... How is that possible? PTSD is a bitch. Back to shading. Shading at the beginning had no cohesiveness. The hatching was sometimes used for shading, other times for detail, and other times for particle effects. Frankly, it was all over the place. What makes this technique so good is the fact that it's a concentrated, cohesive piece of raw detail. Only reason why Berserk is not consumed by it is because Kentaro Miura knew when to use it and what its purpose was. He never relied on it for fundamental detail and only used it as a complementary piece. Isayama, on the other hand, uses similar details for massive fields, speed lines, smoke, character details, and everything in between. This just makes everything a soulless mess. When Isayama wasn't drawing lopsided fields, he drew shading without it really acting like shading. It never really morphed around the characters, and it never really portrayed a proper geometric shape. It just was a filter on top of everything. Whilst the shading had many of its faults, it did have one positive. It's something I can't say about the ending though. This shading definitively made the Titans a lot scarier. The abundance of shading and rough line work naturally gave these creatures a sense of mystery, terror, and uneasiness. It is ironic though, as soon as I discovered the singular plus side to Isayama's early shading, it got removed in favor of gray tones. Gray tones became a major part of Attack on Titan's style, and to say it gave everything a lot more clarity and style would be an understatement. Things look a lot more alive as the shadows actually behave like shadows, unlike this furball thing. It also started to get used as the preferred method of shading, so hatching finally became a complementary piece. Now its usage is usually isolated around the eyes. An issue arises from this, however. What about the grittiness of the Titans? Did it also get lost? And the answer is so clear, it is almost as clear as my segue to our sponsor! This video is brought to you by me, so please subscribe! As for the shading, Isayama would often just dim the shadows to near pitch black levels, and this made the style lose zero grittiness, whilst also being a lot clearer. So far, you would get the idea that Isayama was just a random, talentless dweeb who started scratching away at the paper and learned to draw through brute force of him smashing his head against the wall. And you would be kinda correct. He was never really talented as an illustrator, as his Attack on Titan one-shot was shoddy to say the least. It was messy, sketchy, and unrefined. I'm mentioning this because I was planning to have a segment for paneling where I would just defend his eye for perspective, but then I soon realized it wasn't the best either. Don't get me wrong, the way Isayama forces perspective to convey scale of these titans at times is magical, but it simply doesn't come close to his later iterations. Take these panels for example. They convey the exact same series of stories, but one is drawn with multiple panels, whilst the other one is a singular full-page spread. Isayama captures so much momentum, so many sequences of events, in just a single page spread. It's frankly spectacular. Now compare that to this. I think this goes to show just how much information a single snapshot can capture if an artist thinks out of the box and utilizes every single technique he has at his disposal. This panel is frankly a masterpiece.